I'd ran away for a reason. I was not happy, and nor were my foster parents when my father came blaming them for my behaviour. He was a psychopath. What can I say? Later, I just got off the bus at St Mary's Cray, Orpington. I was heading to the shops where I saw a woman dragging a young girl across the road by her hair. The girl had a bright red top on with a giant Minnie Mouse on it. I wanted to say something, but I knew I'd look immediately like the bad guy. A bloke stopping a woman in the street with her child, several people walking by. They were looking and did nothing. I'm not justifying my lack of action. I'm just explaining how it went down. I followed her, hoping she'd go out of sight, so we could have a quiet little chat, when I realised, whatever I said or did, this kid would get it 10 times worse later. I was screwed no matter what. I followed her anyway, and she dragged, slapped and shouted at this young girl, until I couldn't do nothing anymore. "Hey!" I shouted behind her. "Nah, that's enough," I said, walking faster. She glanced back and sped up, letting go of the girl's hair and dragging her down an alley by the dentist, where she let go of her and grabbed her by the arm. I called the police and carried on about my business. As I was on the phone, I gave descriptions, time, date, explained the account. Quite good detail. I finished my shopping, went back towards the bus stop, and the little girl were in front of me waiting for the same bus. Got back on the phone to the police, told them, came off the phone and started recording her from a distance. She was still holding the young girl's arm, dragging her along, but less violently, although she was definitely using force. She got on the bus before me and I followed her. The young girl was silent throughout. I'd been there, so I knew what she was going through. I got off at my stop and they carried on. I called the police back. I explained I had a video, clearer descriptions, which bus it was, which bus stop, where she'd gone to. I was informed they'd sent a vehicle but couldn't find her. I told her why they couldn't find her. It was because she'd just left on the bus, and that I now had a video and that she'd gone on to another stop. What if she'd paid by the bank card? They'd have her ID, no problem. They said, "Thanks for your call, Mr. Daly. Unfortunately, there's nothing further we can do from here." I asked her on a quote. I said, "You fucking kidding me?" To be told, "No, sir, unfortunately. Thanks for your help in this matter." They couldn't take it any further. That was 2. I was coming home from work. It had been a nice day. The sun was out and everyone was happy. They were really peppy until I stepped on the bus and the atmosphere changed completely. I could feel it. 2 guys glanced at me with knowing eyes, then put their eyes down to their phones. I glanced around and again it was a woman with children. This time it was 2 kids, one of which was clearly disabled. I'm assuming Downs, although it was possibly a complex case. He wouldn't sit down, but when he was allowed to stand up, he was well behaved and not hurting anyone. He wasn't noisy or violent, he just wanted to stand up. He must have been 12, maybe younger. She told him to sit twice, then dragged him down beside her by the wrist. Glances were thrown round by people on the bus, heads down, no drama so far. Then I noticed why he wants to stand up. She's digging her fingers into his arm, not just white knuckling it, but she's making deep marks. He tries to get up, she pulls him down and starts swearing at him and threatening him. I make eye contact with the guy opposite me. "How long's this been going on?" it says. He puts his head down, he's not helping me, I got it. The other kid is well behaved, sat on the other side, sat on the other chair, no issues. I can't see any marks on him. The lad starts crying where she's hurting him and he throws his arms around to get her off him. She stands up and chucks him into the corner, slaps him twice and tells him he's fucking done for. When he gets up, tells him he's fucking done for when he gets home. I pull up the police on my phone and message him. It's a vulnerable kid. I'm calling it in here. Call me a grass, all you like. I give the bus registration, time, date, description of the kid, women and details of school she shouted and bawled about. They have more than enough details to call the driver and stop the bus, or just to pull it over. I get off at my stop and I call them again to reinforce the online form I've just submitted. I explain everything, including the last place I saw them. The guy on the phone says, "It's been downgraded immediately. They aren't touching it." I can almost feel him shake his head in disgust myself. Then he turns to me and says, "Sorry sir, thanks for reporting it, we'll take it from here." I heard what he said at first and asked him, "Are they sending a car then?" He replied, "It will definitely be checked out now you've reported it, sir." "So someone's on the way?" I asked. "There's nothing I can do, sir. I've put it forwards. The rest is up to them." And that's 3. And here's where it starts to get interesting. I'll go into my personal accounts much more in Checkmate, but for now, let's just say I was arrested on suspicion of assault. I was cautioned and released. I had no idea what this meant at the time, and I had no clue the legal repercussions. I was literally pulled over by police and asked if I knew about the incident at my ex's house. She's saying you assaulted her. I replied, yes, I pushed her. She wouldn't let me leave, which is exactly what occurred, and I was arrested. Now at this point I knew absolutely nothing about the law or exactly how low my ex would go to. I'd been at the petrol station putting my PIN number into the pad to pay out. I'd taken my big silver rings off to click the buttons when a copper snatched the rings and pocketed them and asked me my name. I told him my name. He arrested me there and then. I was told to sit on the curb by his colleague. I remember replying, relax, I ain't going anywhere, mate, not whilst he's got my rings anyway. It was polite. Hell, under the circumstances it was borderline casual. To which he replied, I'm not your mate. Which is in part a typical southern thing around here. Up north, call your last chuck is endearing. It's polite. Down south, they take offence pretty quick, and it's a bit pathetic, to be honest. It's the same with the mate thing. Alright, mate, it's perfectly normal up north. Down south, not so much. But to hear it from a copper, it's plain embarrassing. I informed them. I said I've got a subluxative shoulder. Cuffing me behind me could cause substantial problems if the shoulder needs to drop. I'm happy. They confirmed with my doctor if required. They didn't get aggressive, and I was sat on the curb as requested, but they cuffed me anyway, behind my back. As a note, first thing they did when I informed my solicitor was uncuff me. Fella at the counter on the sign-in had an attitude, but I never had any real problems with them until the van turned up and they chucked me inside. I told them I'd walk and was heading towards the van, but no pushing me around was insisted upon. I kept it calm, chill, despite being stuck between two grates moving sideways. I was given a duty solicitor and he said the same thing. I could go to court and I might win, or I could accept the caution and be let out now. Note, if you are ever in this situation, get your arse over to accused.me.uk on Facebook group and get yourself some decent advice. I wasn't aware of any of this at the time and just accepted the caution. Why wouldn't I? I'd not done anything wrong, it was just a warning, like I'd been led to believe, right? Yeah, wrong. The group you need is accused.me.uk on Facebook. It's accused.me.uk on Facebook. If you've been cautioned, it means you've accepted responsibility for the act. The person can then go on to file further claims, an injunction or non-molestation order as it's also called, against you, which naturally, with my luck, is exactly what happened. I'd been advised by the police at Bromley to not go back to the flat, the private accommodation which was a joint tenancy, and to find somewhere else to stay. I did, and I put myself into bed and breakfast. I was starting to look into the law, as this accusation had come so out of the blue. I was concerned now. I'd just been made homeless, essentially by the police, and I thought this was right. I called the solicitor, and as he couldn't help me, got myself another one who recommended I get a police escort to get my stuff away from the flat. I arranged this all and turned up as arranged with the police to get my stuff. I waited outside whilst the police went up and explained the situation to her. She kicked off at them. She decided to keep half of my stuff. I just watched my paperwork and my clothes so I could split, to be fair, when a little moped turned up and a fella approached me. Tracy Daly, he asked, handed me a brown letter. I opened it. To be found I'd just had a court summons placed on me to defend against this non-molestation order. My knees buckled and I fell to the ground right there when I read the accusations. She didn't want an injunction because I'd left her for someone else. She didn't want an injunction because she'd have to go back to her mom. See, she refused to live alone as she had panic attacks when she was on her own. Her mother had been abusive to her and she didn't want to go back there. And she didn't want an injunction because I'd pushed her out of the way when she refused to let me go. She wanted an injunction for 153 different accounts that she'd written out that she says were over a 5-year period. One was breaking into the garage. Garage had my punch bag inside it. I had a key and we were in a joint tenancy. I'd not gone near that garage since we'd parted, so the only times I'd been in there was when I lived there. I'd never once had to break into anywhere. Then the things turned nasty. He'd screamed in my face and hit things. We used to argue, that's true. We both had our share of therapy for different reasons. I'd only hit something once. It was a wall, and she wasn't even in the property at the time. I'd punched the wall because I'd got a letter saying my brother and sister wanted nothing to do with me. And could I blame them, as I'd never been there for them? Normally I'd not care. I was used to bullshit opinions. But this had come from my sister, about a week after I'd got my mother's coroner's report. I snapped and the wall copped it. The ex was downstairs in the car at the time, waiting for me to go out. The accusation went worse. He'd raped me in my sleep. He did this 46 times. He used to sharpen a knife in front of me, and I knew he wanted to kill me like his father had. She was clearly trying to make me snap, finding a way to be malicious, looking back at it. However, I didn't have the confidence and knew what she'd done was actually quite clever. After all, who's going to believe the lad who grew up in care? 46%, wasn't it, who'd go into prison, get convicted? We must be guilty. I'd never forgiven myself for my granddad at this point. Perhaps I was the issue. Truth is, I'd never raped anyone. Period. She bought me the penknife. It was part of a set with a tobacco tin and lighter on. Each had my initials and the blade was crap. I sharpened it once when I first got it and chucked it in the middle drawer of the desk where it had stayed. I didn't have the art to throw it out because it was a gift, but it was unusable for anything really. I went to court without a solicitor because I knew nothing of the law and I accepted the injunction come non-molestation order. I had no knowledge that this meant if she accused me of something, even if it hadn't occurred, the police would just come and pick me up. I thought it simply meant I wasn't to be in certain distances of her. And as I said to the judge, we're done. I've never been or ever will be a threat to her. I helped her get into therapy, put the injunction through. I want nothing to do with her. I knew when he looked me in the eye and said, "Are you sure you don't want to seek counsel?" that I'd fucked up. I knew it, but I just wanted it to be over. No, it's fine, put it through. I had no desire to be near her. And I was right. I didn't. However, the accusations started coming in and the arrests started to appear. The first one was actually the worst. Knock knock on the flat door. I was half awake first thing when the copper said, "Do you know?" and named my ex. I said, "Yeah, that's my ex-girlfriend." I was grabbed, pulled forwards, and then sideways. I was instantly awake when one of the officers said, "Let him get dressed." I grabbed my stuff, and the second my trousers was on, I was frog marched out and chucked in the van. There was no questions, no telling me what was happening. I was just nicked. This time I got a solicitor. He was pretty damn good too and explained everything to me. She'd accused me of being outside her flat that evening in the rain. I hadn't been, and later in court it would appear that she'd seen someone who might or might not have been male or female who might have worn a bag that was similar to mine. This pattern would continue. I got to know the book they give you in the cells inside out. Initially I was accused of breaking the non-molestation order, then later I was questioned on all the allegations in the papers, which led to the non-molestation order. Every account of rape she claimed I'd caused, every wall she claimed I'd hit, every time she'd seen someone outside, every crank call she'd had, anything which she could make out was me, and everything which she completely made up was to fall on me. I did the only thing I knew how to do. I called everybody I could. I called Sam, support after murder and manslaughter, which were amazing. I called my girlfriend's parents and explained everything, and they were really helpful. I called the college advisors and asked for references, and they gave them to me. And months later, they offered me a job working with vulnerable people. I didn't take it, but hey, to my ex, fuck you. I was arrested, questioned, and released 12 or more times before they just called me. More often than not, I was at college, so it was easy enough for me to get them to call the college and get the tutor to confirm I'd been there the whole time, whatever accusation she'd come up with this time had occurred. I'd still lost my flat though. I'd gone into debt of £3,000 plus on hotels and later been homeless, had to get a debt solicitor, housing solicitor and a criminal law solicitor all at the same time to rebuild my life. So yeah, I went homeless to temporary accommodation, to a halfway house to my own council flat. It wasn't easy, but I got there. The police stopped calling, but I still had to go to court on one account. After all the accusations, all the fake nonsense that pulled my life upside down, what was it that nearly got me sent to prison? Paying my bills. I was still under injunction. As such, this meant I wasn't allowed anywhere near her. Something like 1 mile or something, I forget. I was in Bromley meeting my girlfriend and then going to the bank and then home. I went to see the girlfriend. Then I went to the bank. As I walked in, she was walking out with her father. I'd already taken to writing down every single place I'd been in case she made an accusation. I'd got to the point that everything I did had a date and time on it, and so I was untouchable. so I knew they had cameras in the bank, but at the same time I was near her. I stepped to one side well before